Hi, everybody. It's Matt from At the Inn Studios. Yeah, I just wanted to welcome you real quick to Enforcing the Fundamentals with Doug Harding, episode 3. And we have a guest this week. It's one of Doug's players from the Cowichan Valley Capitals, that rookie year team, that franchise expansion team from 1980-81. He went on to do some pretty notable things in the NHL. He played 17 years. I'm talking about Geoff Courtnall. Geoff was very kind to get back to us right away and volunteer to come and sit down and have a chat with us. And he had some pretty interesting things to say about how that year impacted his career and how he sort of ended up there as well with Dad. So enjoy this interview. It is the very first interview I've ever done, especially on this scale. And one of the things I found was it worked out kind of exactly as I expected. I kind of expected them to talk and go back and forth and reminisce and drop some knowledge. And it really did happen. Unfortunately for me, I had a big list of backup questions in case something stalled. And I was sitting there crossing them all off as they were talking. So I kind of struggled a little bit as I realized that most of the material I wanted to get into, they had already covered. So um, it is what it is. Enjoy this show. I can't thank Geoff enough and for coming on and talking to us. And if you have the means, please do support his foundation, the Courtnall Foundation for Mental Health. It is a wonderful charity and very close to not just the Courtnall brothers' hearts, but ours as well, as we've had some mental health issues run through our family. And it's very important that you take care of that. So enjoy Doug and Geoff Courtnall and a little bit of me here and there. Sure.
Okay.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back. This is episode 3 of Enforcing the Fundamentals with Doug Harding. I'm Matt. I'm here with Doug. And for those of you that have been following along, we were discussing the first year of the Cowichan Valley Capitals, 1980 to 81. I did a little research and I reached out and I managed to track down one of Dad's old players, Mr. Geoff Courtnall, who's going to sort of sit here with us today and discuss the Cowichan Valley Capitals and coming up through the ranks, getting into major juniors and his time with Dad. Now I understand you guys met in Victoria. Geoff, exactly how did you run into this gentleman here?
I don't. Well, okay. So I played hockey at the Racket Club growing up, which was in Victoria, and then in the summer we used to always skate at Oak Bay, and Doug was out coaching, and then asked a few of us to come and play on the Oak Bay Junior Bees, which I was one of the guys who played there, and back then I was a smaller guy. I mean, I was skinny and, still growing. And I think that playing for Doug at Oak Bay Junior Bees was probably the sort of start of me developing into the player that I became. But I think, I look at that and I quit in January. I don't know if it was January. Doug would be probably know more, but I wasn't having a lot of fun on that in the second half. I mean, we had a good team, but a lot of the older guys on that team weren't that serious, and it was fun, but it wasn't what I really needed to do in life. And I stopped playing hockey then and moved to Alberta because I graduated from grade 12 in January. So I moved to Calgary and started working in construction, and then I didn't come back till June. And then Doug asked me, I skated again in the summer with Doug and all the guys at Oak Bay. And I think that shows all the dedication that Doug gave to us as kids by really volunteering and coming out and coaching in the summers. And then he asked me to go play in Cowichan. And, through those summer skates, Jack Shoup at the time asked me to try out for the Cougars. And I was the last cut. And then I went to Cowichan, and basically Doug built that team from junior B players. And we ended up having a hell of a team. And Doug was a great coach.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking up some of the stats from Cowichan, and what really got me is from that first year, 3 of you guys ended up in the NHL. And
Yeah.
then the year after that, Daryl Ray came along, making up the fourth. And as a kid, I was just running around the arena at 3, 4 years old. I didn't know what was going on. Once in a while, I'd get let on the ice to skate around with the big kids. That didn't work out well once, but we won't get into that today. Um, Dad, what do you remember about Geoff when he showed up when you in Oak Bay? About the way he sort of handled the way he was playing and his drive and everything.
Actually, I knew Geoff a little bit before that. He had a coach, Mr. Crockett, at the racket club in Victoria, and he asked if I would come out. And I went out to a couple of their practices while I was coaching with the junior bees. And Geoff was the guy that was working the hardest, even amongst the midget group. He was little, and I'm going like, wow, this kid works really hard. Like he's determined to be better. So it goes back almost to midget. I had a group of guys that we had guys like Kurt Fraser, and we had a lot of, Cougars kids. And even we had some kids come over from New Westminster from the Bruins to skate twice a week, was it, Geoff? Can't
Yeah,
remember.
usually 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought, you know what? If we're really going to benefit the local, group of kids the best we can, there's kids that I really like that I've seen at the racket club. Lane Crockett was one, but Geoff was certainly in mine. So I asked a couple of midget kids to play with these junior A kids, figuring, you know what? I think these kids have skills, but it takes a lot of intestinal fortitude to step up to. I think Geoff had been a stick boy with the Cougars at one
Mhm.
time too, so Geoff knew quite a few of the kids, and I was just really impressed with his work ethic. I think I watched him play midget maybe 5 or 6 times. I don't know whether they're aware of that, but when we got so I invited him out to those skates, and he did really well. Uh, his job wasn't to get in there and tough it out with the bigger kids, but he handled the puck really well. He shot the puck really well. I don't know whether I ever taught him anything, but I was I had always been impressed. Plus, he, I just had a feeling that there are special people out there, and we got as many special kids into that program as we could. But yeah, playing junior B was tough. Coaching junior B was tough because um, most kids consider themselves past the opportunity to go anywhere, which is not always the truth. But yeah, you have practices, and half the kids don't show up, and practices are usually late at night where the cost of ice isn't particularly good. And but one of the fellows that I've been involved in the junior B there, I mentioned him in one of the other broadcasts. Dennis Farrell got involved in this Esquimalt team that was supposed to be called the Capitals, and they lost their ice contract before the season ever opened, and it got moved up there. And I thought this would be a perfect place because what we're going to look for is junior B and as many young kids and do as well as we can. We're not expected to do well, so there isn't a whole lot of pressure. But I talked to Geoff because I thought he could play. Uh, Not that you're making a whole lot of guarantees when you have 130 kids that sign up to come to camp because it's a new camp, but I thought this would be perfect for him, you know. And as it worked out, he had a great year with us. I think he and Danny Hodgson played on the same line.
Yeah,
Was
and
Danny?
Rick now.
Well, you should have seen those two go. It was exceptional. So yeah, that's how that got started. And Geoff going to the Cougars. Jack Shupia used to come out to those skates, and they were in as it turned out to be a Memorial Cup run. And Jack asked me, he said, we're down some players, and he asked me for some recommendations. And I said, well, I think this kid and this kid and this kid, you know. And Geoff is one of the kids that I mentioned, and Jack had mentioned that he thinks he's a little bit too small at this point. And I said, but he's got a big heart, and he's always had a big heart, and he's had a great work ethic. Like he doesn't mind working. Uh, he likes to have fun when fun times come. But when he came to the arena, he came to the arena to get better, and that always impressed me. I could tell this story. I don't know whether Geoff remember this story or not, but we were playing a game against the Nanaimo, and they had a player on that team that had been basically an enforcer for the Cougars. I think, were you a stick boy when McAdams was with Victoria, Geoff?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, he used to. He seemed to take great note in picking out Geoff and terrorizing him. What worked out pretty good about that was that Jack said that he had looked at a couple of our players and he wasn't much interested in. And I said, well, you got to take a look at Geoff because he has the skill, he has the heart, he's a Victoria boy. How much of a bigger story can this be than that? And he said, okay, I'll come up and see how he plays, because he really hadn't seen him play other than playing in our camps at summertime. And so I don't know whether you remember this too, because I think this was a big kicker for you. I told you that Jack was coming to the game, and you said, "Oh, that's great." And I said, "He's coming here to look at you. Yeah, he wants to see if you'd be a fit, if they lose any more players, or if injuries should take over his roster." And like I said, they're in a pretty solid run to the Memorial Cup, or trying to. And I said to Jack, watch Geoff, because you know what? He can play hard and he can play tough. And Jack said, okay, I'm coming. Anyway, he came. All right. And I told Geoff, if Ryan McAdams gets in your face, you just drop your gloves and you just start swinging. And you just keep swinging. And Geoff looked at me and went, are you out of your mind? I could see him thinking that. He said, okay, coach.
Never had a fight in my life.
Yeah, you hadn't been, because that's what you said. I've never been in a fight. I said, just drop your gloves and keep swinging. And sure enough, first period, and McAdams is a big kid. By the way, he's an editor of a newspaper today.
That guy, that guy in that fight gouged my eyes. He was an idiot.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did. When you started swinging, you must have hit him 5 or 6 times before he even dropped his gloves. Like, he was shocked. The referees and the linesmen stepped in, pulled you apart. Well, because it was you, he went absolutely bananas on the way to the penalty box, and he got fired out of the game. And that was the last game of the season with Nanaimo, so you didn't have to worry about it. And you had such a big smile on your face coming out of the box that he'd been thrown out of the game. So Jack came to me after the game, and he said, hey, he's got the guts. I don't know how much he can or if he can play with us, but we'll give him a chance. And we lost you. We lost the last part of the season. You got to move up to the Cougars. They did go to the Memorial Cup, did they not?
Yeah.
At the first year.
Yeah.
And he actually came to me and said, thank you. He said, I don't know what you saw, but you saw something and we could use it. He's still more of a skill hockey player than, he's going to have a tough time. I said, well, you know what? If you talk to him, tell him what he needs, I'm pretty sure that he'll do it. And you did. That summer, you went in at about 160 pounds. You came out about 185, 190 pounds. And it made a huge difference. I think the motivation of Russ coming out of Notre Dame and going with the Cougars, this is all, but you made yourself. You made yourself by taking on something you didn't even think that you could do, but you were willing to do it. And it made a huge difference, a huge, huge difference. Jack was
fantastic. Now, Geoff, mid-story, it all seemed to click. I could see the smile come across your face. So do you remember all the lead up to that? Obviously, maybe the back and forth between the two coaches, not so much, but...
Yeah, no. So, I mean, I remember it all very clearly because it's such an important part of my life. I think that, when I was 17, 18, I was really small. I was a late bloomer. I mean, I didn't grow till I was like after I graduated from high school in grade 12, I left. And I think I was like about 5'6" or 5'7". And when I came home in June, I was 6 feet tall. But I was still, skinny and 100, like Doug said, 160 pounds. And that's exactly what happened, is that I had to, basically what happened was, after that Memorial Cup year, the scout for LA told me, he said, you know what, you could play in the NHL if you put on 20 pounds and played a little more physical. And so basically I lifted weights like 4 days a week, drank a lot of protein shakes, took boxing, did everything. And then had the year with, my next year I had a great year. And then with the year with Russ, I had an even better year, and basically signed as a free agent with Boston. I could have signed with anybody that year. But I go back to Doug, like, I mean, I look at it and, for a lot of us that grew up in that area that played, which, there was Torrey Robertson, myself, John Newberry, Andy Dickey, Kim Collins, all those guys, we all skated together in the summer. And, Doug deserves a lot of credit for the success, because like I said, he volunteered coaching us at summer hockey because somebody had to be out there to run some drills, and then we would scrimmage. So, obviously I have a lot of great memories. Doug was a really good coach. He could be a prick when he had to be, which not a lot of guys know how to control that or when to use it. Pat Quinn was probably the best. Mike Keenan was good at it too, but coaches who really could control teaching and the game, and then giving guys a hard time when we weren't playing well, were hard to find. So Doug definitely deserves a lot of credit for me getting to where I got to, just because that age is where so many kids, like Doug said, the junior B team, we had lots of great players on that team. Like I remember a lot of those guys. That Kenny Buna was a good player, but he was in university. And I can't remember what John, the big right winger, he was a good player. But a lot of those guys, like Doug said, they didn't come to, I got an exam tomorrow, I can't come to a 10:30 practice. So that was a tough team for Doug to coach. But then Cowichan, he took a bunch of junior B players from all over the island. Danny Hodson from wherever, I think he's from Alberta, and then Rick Nasham from Saskatchewan. And I think we finished second that year, didn't we, Doug?
Yeah, and that's the season that finished short because all the arenas were going out on strike. So Nanaimo finished first, but Nanaimo hadn't beaten us at home all year long. They'd only lost 5 games or 6 games all year long, and they lost 3 or 4 of them to us. We played them in a 11-game semifinal for the BC Coastal Hockey Division Championship. And it was hard because we won the first 3 games and we couldn't win the next 2. It was hard. Larry McNabb, who became a very, very good friend of mine, and actually Larry was a bit of a friend before I even went to Cowichan, because I used to send some of those summer kids like John Newberry up to Nanaimo to him. Larry became a pretty close friend, but boy, you didn't want to be playing Larry's teams because they were a bit like Larry. They were going to score a lot of goals. They were going to beat the crap out of you. And,
Steve Braun, that guy was tough.
Yes.
Don't forget him. Yeah, they had lots of tough guys on that team. They were always hard to play at, especially in Nanaimo.
Yeah. Schedule worked well for us, Geoff, because they had to play on Saturday at home and then come down to play us in Cowichan on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
Now, this team sounds like it was, I don't want to quite say the island of misfit toys, but definitely, like you were saying, kind of cobbled together. I'm looking at the roster, vast amount of it from all over the island. So what was it like in the locker room as you guys just sort of kept winning through that year?
We had a lot of fun. I mean, Dave O'Brien was on that team. Tracy Patterson,
Awesome player.
Marty Irvine,
Yep.
Dave Branting.
Yep.
Was Steve Selva on that team?
Steve Selva was on that team.
Yeah, we
Yep.
had a good team. Wade Jensen was a goalie. Yeah, no, it was actually a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. It was a great group of guys. You know, a lot of guys who basically thought their careers were junior B and they were going to be done. Like, I think Tracy Patterson was 19 or 20. I think was he the captain of our team that year?
Yes, he was. He was a
Yeah,
20-year-old.
He was a
I
great
was
leader.
surprised because all you Victoria guys actually lived in Victoria and had to commute every day all the way to Duncan.
Thank you. That was going to be a question I had.
Yeah, we all drove up there every day for practice, and that was not easy.
No. Which brings
so
me
I'm kind of looking at the listings here, and it's, you know, you got a couple of guys that were in their 20s as far as the listings, and then most of you guys were 16, 17, 18. So I know what I was like at that age. So you guys are out there, you're playing hockey, you're winning a lot. What was the locker room like with you guys? Were you sounded like you're all pretty tight?
Oh yeah, we hated Saanich, so all the guys they had on that team when I played at Oak Bay, we hated all those guys. Marty was a great player. You know, Tracy Patterson was a great player. I mean, we hated playing against them, but when you come together on a team and you know, you want to win, you end up really forming a great friendship for sure. Yeah, it was a tight group.
Yeah, and I love hearing the stories like this. It just absolutely fascinates me. I'm not the guy that got into that sort of environment myself, but just hearing the camaraderie over the course of, you know, decades later. You were just mentioning in our pre-show that you had just reconnected with one of the guys, Danny Hodgson, had a good conversation with him. So it's always been fascinating to me, stuff like that. So
Danny Hodgson was 15 years old. And how many points did he get that year? Like 120 or something?
Yeah, I think he finished second 96. Or third in scoring in the 96? League.
Yeah, he was, wow, he was at 15 years old. I mean, he was really good coming into junior at 15, how well he played.
Yeah, the only guy that got more points than him that year was Len Myers with 108. And you, Geoff, were fifth on the team with 76. So it's not like you weren't contributing either. Like I'm looking at some of these stats, and you guys got, looks like 8 guys with 70 or more points in there, including Rick Nasham, Marty Irvine, and Dean Evison. So I mean,
Dean. Yeah, I forgot about him.
How could you forget about him?
Yeah. I you know, that's funny. I mean, he would have been how old? 16 when he was on that
16.
team.
Yeah.
Yep. That's correct.
Where did he come from?
He came
according to what I'm looking at, Winnipeg.
Brandon, actually.
Yeah.
Brandon?
Yeah, Brandon.
Yeah, and then I played against him. He was in Hartford, I think, and then can't remember where I played against him after that. But yeah, I played my whole career basically against him. Now he's coaching in Minnesota.
He spent a while on the Whalers and then the Sharks, the Dallas Stars, and finished up with the Calgary Flames, according to what I'm looking at here. So you guys, you and Dean really came out of that. And you were of the 4 that landed in the NHL. You had, my research says 17 seasons. Does that sound right to you?
Yep.
And Dean with 14. So I mean, you guys had a good long career playing against each other for, you know, it sounds like for 20 years, really.
Yeah, probably. And then what about Hodgson? How many years did he play?
Hodgson, he had 4. He did 3 with the Canucks in the late 80s and 1 with the Maple Leafs before that in about 85, 86.
Do you remember, Geoff? He broke his leg in on a power play in front of the net in Vancouver. I can't remember who fell on it, and that pretty well end his NHL career. But
Right.
it's too bad because he could have played for a long time too. He had a long career in Europe, though, I believe. Did he
Right.
not?
Yeah.
Yeah. He still talks about all the fun stuff in Europe. So
Yeah, it looks like he played right up to 2005 in Switzerland.
Yeah.
So I cannot wait to talk to Danny. And what fascinates me is, I mean, most of you guys, if you remember me at all, remember me as the kid in diapers that got kicked out of the house because mom needed to sleep, right?
Yeah, no, I know. Doug was great. I can remember having dinners over at your house. You'd invite a bunch of the players. It was great.
Mhm. No, I definitely remember that. There's mom's got a big photo album of me sitting on random hockey players' laps and being read stories or playing Lego and stuff like that. One day I'll get my hands on it. Hopefully not too soon, because that's mom's.
Yeah.
Right. So one question I have: you stuck with sort of that. You went basically from junior B into the WHL. Was there any thought about doing the university
Yeah, no,
level?
so what happened was I actually had enrolled at UBC and I was going to play on the hockey team. And then the Cougars traded for Russ. And
Mhm.
Dave Andrews asked me if I wanted to come back and play overage. And so I said, yeah, because I always wanted a chance to play with him. We didn't really play together growing up other than at summer hockey and Saturday mornings. We always played at the Racket Club at 6. So basically, he and I played together, and that was just probably what launched my career in the NHL, really.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it sounds like it probably kickstarted both of you in that direction. Right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I protected him all year, and
that was a switch in roles, wasn't it?
Is Russ going to tell me the same story if I can get a hold of him?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I had a lot of fights that year, like a lot. Everybody, he was our best player, and all the other teams, everybody went after him. I would come flying in there. Whoever else, Sean Green was on a line with us, so Sean Green was actually a good fighter. So it was Sean Green and I would come flying in there, and basically there was lots of fights. But I think I had 114 points that year, and I think Russ had 100 and I don't know, 100 and something, and then he was Toronto's seventh. He was seventh pick
in the first round.
And at Christmas I could have signed pretty well with most of the teams in the NHL. I had offers from probably a lot of them.
Yeah.
Well, that's and coming from being that smaller kid, being the late bloomer, and I'm glad you touched on that, because that was going to be a question I had, because seeing the ages on these teams, you kept saying you're a smaller kid. Some of us just don't grow until we're 18, 19. How did that feel? I mean, you had dad had faith in you, Doug had faith in you, gave you some tips, helped you grow your confidence, and you've now gone from Oak Bay to having paperwork on the table. How was that for you?
Well, I think Doug probably nailed it where he said I was small and I worked hard, and I did have skill because I played the game from such a young age. My dad was obviously a pro player and coached us when we were young. So I always had to really work to compete. And I think that's what really made me the player that I became later on. But there's just so many steps to getting there. Like I always tell parents today that ask me to come and watch their kids, or at the rink when I'm watching games, they ask me what I think of their kids, and I always tell them, listen, the most important thing is a kid has fun, because right now there's so many great players all over the world. Everything has to go perfectly for your kid to make it in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, Doug, then Oak Bay, then Cowichan, then Victoria were all steps in the direction of what it took for me to get there. And then I think that when I got there, it just, the hard work. I mean, my first three years pro, my first year I was in the minors most of the year. Second year I didn't play a lot, but I stayed out after every practice and shot pucks and worked on things, trying to get better. And then, all of a sudden, my third year, I started to play more and more. And then I think I scored 20 goals that year. And that was kind of the start for things for me.
That's fantastic. So I've managed to find some of those Victoria Cougar stats. Yeah, you got in a lot of fights. This has got you listed at 186 penalty minutes that year.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
they were against me mostly. I was IMO, and all of my players wanted to pick on Russ, so Geoff would take care of that for him.
Yeah.
You know what? It's you see players over the years, but that year in Nanaimo with Major Junior was tough. But the tough part was two of my favorite people were the Courtnall brothers, and they just had such a great year. And Geoff had made such phenomenal strides, and Russ was such a gifted, puck handling athlete. It was a little hard for me to actually not cheer from the opposition bench every time they did something extraordinary, and they did a lot of extraordinary things.
Yeah.
I mean, I just look at the stack next to the penalty minutes for that year. With 186 minutes in the box, you still managed to get 114 points. So, I mean, clearly you had some stuff going on. You weren't coming in there and sandbagging anything.
No. Yeah, we Russ and I really clicked together. I thought when they traded for him in Vancouver, I thought I would play with him here, but I was still played with Trevor most of the time. And then, Russ, obviously he had a great career too. We pretty much both played exactly the same amount. I unfortunately got concussions at the end and couldn't play. And then, Russ didn't get another contract his last year. And then basically, I think he skated for a while, but didn't get one, and then decided he was going to retire. So,
yeah. Actually, Geoff,
Well,
sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I've watched a lot of when you were playing in the NHL and the pros. But those years that you were having in St. Louis, if there hadn't been those injuries, I think you'd probably done another 5 years. Those were exceptional years, knowing the physical condition so that you had to play under. So again, huge kudos to you, right straight from the time you were 14, right up until you were an old man.
Yeah, no, I was in great shape, and it was very, very disappointing to have to retire. But, I got a lot of concussions through my career, and then started getting them easier and easier at the end. But, that St. Louis team that I played on, I mean, my first time there, I played with Adam Oates and Paul McLean, and then Brett Hull and Adam Oates. And then I left, came to Vancouver. And when I went back, I played with Brett Hull and Pierre Turgeon. And then I played with Pavel Dimitra, who was probably one of my favorite players to play with. That kid was so good, so skilled. I played on a line with he and Joe Murphy, and we were getting like 4 or 5 points a game. And then Joe broke his wrist. And then we had troubles getting somebody again to the three of us, we were just like, we really clicked. And then, it was St. Louis was a great place to play. I love playing there. And then when I retired, obviously we had McInnes and Pronger, and we had an amazing team. We were first overall when I got hurt. I came back late in the playoffs that year, and then the following year I got hurt in I think the 10th game or something. But it was a great ride for sure.
Okay, now something just triggered me there. So last show, Dad was telling us that first year in Cowichan, the Canucks were also held their training camp there because it was a new arena, and they were kind of having you guys help out a little here or there. Did you have any involvement in that training camp at all for the Canucks at 17, 18 years old?
No, not at all.
Not a thing?
Doug might have, but I'm sure they would have probably used Doug to do some stuff for them, because whenever they go anywhere, they always are looking for guys to help out. Like I know this year they're in Victoria again, and they've already talked to some of the junior teams there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure Doug was involved, but no, not as players. I think I remember seeing those guys running laps around that Cowichan.
They had to go into the hotel and back too.
Stan Smeal said it was just a joke, because
Mhm.
half the guys were like, I think it might have been with the first year Krutov and Larionov were there, and
Yeah,
or whoever the other guy was, but was
Matt,
it
the
where
sun.
did
Yeah,
Krutov? I don't know. Anyways, I
yeah,
don't think you guys wanted to run.
yeah. All I know is I got to do a little bit of service for them, and I got to referee their morning scrimmages, which wasn't appreciated by the players because I wasn't a very good referee. But they did leave us, thank goodness for the budget. They did leave us 20 dozen sticks for us helping out when they left. That's where you got all the good sticks from, buddy.
Wow.
That's where all those silver fibers came from. You thought I bought those. No, those were gifts from the Vancouver Canucks.
Well,
Yeah.
there you go. You got your first piece of equipment
Yeah.
way before you got a first luck.
I had better sticks there than my first year in Boston.
All right, so from Oak Bay to the pros, lots of little steps. Did you carry did any major things that you carried with you that you learned playing minors on the even Victoria, Cowichan, wherever that you really took and found really helped you way up the line?
Well, I think, definitely work ethic was, Doug ran hard practices, and Doug yelled and screamed at us lots when we were doing the drills. So,
He's scary when he yells and screams. I was really good at getting that reaction out of him.
yeah. And so I think that Doug was very similar to a coach, Terry Crisp. And I had Terry Crisp in Moncton. And I can remember him, after practice one day, Boston sent me down there for 2 weeks or something. And after practice one day, he was skating me, yelling at me, and everybody else was off the ice. And it reminded me of the way Doug used to yell at us when we were doing skating drills. And so anyways, I'm working hard doing all these drills. And then he calls me over at the end and he goes, "Okay, kid, you're going up. Don't come back." So, yeah, things like that. Obviously, I think I learned, I think I just developed the skill, actually developed as I got more ice time and more experience. Like my 4th year in Boston, I played with Cam Neely, or actually it was probably my 3rd year, because I played with Cam for like 3 years. So it was Cam Neely and I and Kenny Linsman, and that was a great line. So I think it was always the opportunities that you got, and then, playing on the power play is where you get all the points. And I was pretty much on the power play from that point on in my career.
Yeah, it's true. I can remember being in rooms with people, big fans, going, "Okay, here comes the power play," screaming and yelling at the TV, and not just Doug. You grow up in Vancouver, you have a lot of friends around that are flying the colors. Now, you're saying the work ethic really helped you, but it sounds like it really was the key factor in the whole thing. From everything I've been hearing so far from Oak Bay on, which sounds like probably 14, 15 years old, if I'm getting the math right on that. The one thing you really brought to the table, especially considering you hadn't quite grown into your britches yet, was the work ethic.
Yeah, I mean, I learned that at a young age. So my dad was, in all sports that I played soccer and hockey growing up, from 6 to 16. Quit soccer when I was 16 because, hockey was more what I wanted to be involved in long term, and couldn't make it to all the soccer practices. But I think that my dad basically really instilled, a great work ethic in me at a young age. Did a lot of work with him around the house and a lot of different things that really taught me just being with him and having him as a coach growing up. I had a lot of desire to be successful. So I think that's where a lot of that came from.
That's fantastic. Now, there's in a career such as yours, there's highs and lows all over the place. I mean, you had a long career. It's everything is not a season where you shouldn't win and have turned it into a Disney movie. Did you ever develop anything or learn anything along the way that really helped you cope with slumps or injuries, or just the puck doesn't want to go the way for you, or whatever it is that sort of got into your head?
I mean, hockey or any pro sport is, as I explain it, it's like being on a roller coaster. And when you're one of the players who's expected to score, or winning depends on you scoring goals or the power play scoring goals or whatever, the pressure is immense. And I think that I learned in Boston, we had basically a psychologist who came in. His name was Fred Neff, and I worked with him a lot. And he taught me visualization and relaxation, which really changed my career. And then he got me to read, well, actually, Russ was the first one that introduced me to the book, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. I've read it about 10 times because whenever I would go into a slump, I would start reading the book again. But Fred Neff basically was the first psychologist that I worked with. And the first time I met with him was in Harry Sinden came down and told us that, hey, there'll be a psychologist from one of the schools in Boston. I can't remember which one, whether it was Harvard or one of the schools, but he'll be in the Wise Room after practice Friday, so you guys should go and meet him. And so I was the only guy who showed up, and I did the relaxation and visualization with him, and I scored 2 goals the next day. So then the next Friday he was there, and I just kept going to him, and that's when I really started to score, because I think the mental side of pro sports is way bigger than people realize. Even today, when guys get in guys' heads or negativity gets in guys' heads, you can see the production go down.
That's one of the things that Dad's really been big on over the last several years. At least, not even the last several years, the last several decades. I just haven't been listening to it, which I probably should have been.
Read the book, Power of Your Subconscious Mind.
Fair enough. I will look that up. But as we're sitting here, I can see Dad giving the thumbs up as you're going over all this stuff. So it sounds like that philosophy is really key, not only to success, but with that work ethic. Because I can imagine that the work ethic is going to suffer if you're feeling sort of in a dark mood, or you've not had a lot of good breaks or bad bounces or whatever it is. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, and I think like in my career, the work ethic sometimes got in the way of me being successful, because I would try too hard. I would get too far ahead. I had I had way more speed than most of the guys on the team. So I needed to really learn to relax, stay back, come late with speed. And once I did that, I played with Thomas Gerdine in Boston. And he's kind of the first guy who taught me to let him get the blue line with the puck and then come with speed and learn that I want the defenseman to go get him, and then he'll pass it behind him and I'll skate into it, rather than me get ahead and force the play. And so learning that and basically mastering that basically really changed my career. I had 2 great mentors in Boston, Thomas Gerdine and Charlie Simmer. Charlie Simmer was probably the best goal scorer. He was a terrible skater, but he was probably the best goal scorer that I ever played with. He had an amazing shot, and his shot wasn't that hard, but he basically would hit the corners, or he would always be, one of the biggest things was learning to always have your head up when you were shooting, so you could see where the goalie was and where to shoot. so many guys would just bury their heads and shoot it into the goalie's pads.
Right. Well, and that's just, I mean, it's one thing to take the shot, but a little more accuracy tends to be better other than blind firing. I had a question that just ran out of my head. So with all this time spent on the mental game, do you see a difference for the kids coming up now, whether they are out in the spotlight with the social media and the fact that it went from fans just being able to boo you, maybe at worst see you at a restaurant after the game or something like that, to being able to get right in everybody's head all the time with social media? Does that seem like it's added an extra layer of challenge to either of you?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I mean, it's terrible now what these kids have to deal with, but I mean, I used to hate listening but I used to do it, which was crazy. But I'd listen to the radio on the way home after games and listen to the fans call in and the stuff they would say. And I'd be going, oh my God, they just don't really know what they're talking about. So I can't imagine now with social media and all these guys posting stuff after games. And, if any of these young guys, because they're all online or on social media, read any of this stuff, it would be so easy to get into a negative environment. But I think the players today have way more access to psychologists, the sleep programs they have, and the food, and the health for the players today is 10 times what it was when I retired. And I think that that's why probably these guys, they don't have to go out that much, because they have food in the rink after practice, after games. And that's where we used to always see everyone, was when we would go eat either after practice or after the games. So I'm sure now that's a big part of these guys staying out of the public.
I mean, that sounds fair. I mean, it's a fairly rough age as you're making that conversion when you're stepping up levels in your mid-teens. You have mid to late teens is nutty for anybody, period. But then to have this extra layer of pressure of not only this is my goal, this is what I want, but now I'm being considered a prospect, and not only is my name in the newspaper or on the sports broadcasts, they can get to me through Twitter, Facebook, whatever else is going on up there. And the mental health game must be absolutely brutal these days. And I'm glad that most sports have really come a long way in this. There definitely seems to be advancements in everywhere, that is not just with, the fitness and everything, but there does seem to be psychologists seem to be a larger portion of everything. Dietitians, personal trainers. I would imagine it was pretty much DIY back in the 80s and into the 90s.
Yeah. No, there was there was nothing. I mean, when I broke in Boston, there was 2 fridges in the dressing room and they were both full of beer. And there was no workout equipment. And, it obviously started to change when I left there in 88, but I think that it wasn't probably till Washington. So 89, 90 is when teams started getting dietitians and psychologists and fitness, even fitness trainers, like that didn't really become a big thing until in the mid 90s.
I mean, it definitely seems to be helping the athletes prolong their careers to certain degrees. I mean, there is always the unfortunate injuries here or there, but would you recommend that a kid just coming up there just get right on board with it right away?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, talking to a psychologist can be difficult. It's not always easy to go in and open up, especially if you think you're in good condition, you're in good shape. Where would you rank that as sort of a to-do list for a young guy making those extra jumps? Would you say the psychologist is 1, 3, 5 on your to-do list?
Well, I mean, 3 for sure, but I think that everybody's different. You know, everybody has their own issues, and everybody handles pressure in a different way. Some guys, it doesn't bother them at all, and some guys, it affects them more. So if they want to have a long career, it's basically being able to work through the mental struggle is a big part of guys being successful and having long careers.
Okay. And Doug, how do you feel about all that? You've been sitting there quietly nodding your head along.
Yeah, Geoff forgot. No, I tried mental imagery and focusing with that first year Cowichan team on the road in the hotel after just before everybody had to go to bed. And I had been introduced through some Hockey Canada camps that I'd gone to that actually Bobby Nicholson and Dave Andrews were involved in. And they brought in a sports psychologist. And I thought, oh my God, if I had one of those, I could have probably played another 3 games. But we did some imaging there, and it was basically sort of an exercise that they had given me. And I figured that there might have been maybe 2 or 3 guys that even had an inkling into what I was trying to do, which was cool them down and prepare them for the next day. And I think probably the one guy that keeps mentioning it every time I talk to him was Dean Evison, and he seems to be really hot to trot on the mental part of the game in Minnesota right now. And I was just an introduction, and I was pretty sure I was being ignored, but maybe I wasn't. Maybe there was something that clicked that just picked up at some point in the past. You remember those times?
Oh yeah,
yeah. So,
Fraser
and
Arms. I can remember us having a meeting in the Fraser Arms Hotel in Vancouver.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was. It's the mental part of the game is something that I thought that I lacked as a player. So when I was introduced to it, I've spent probably 25 years following it in relationship to how do you be a competitive athlete and still be able to image the success that that you require. And some kids do it naturally, and some kids it just takes some help. But I think it's just a huge part of making it through life, not just being a hockey player or soccer player. It can be a big part of being a better student,
Yeah. Yeah.
better family. It's and I like I said, Geoff, you picked up on it, which was really a good thing. And I wish that I had been introduced to something
Yeah.
like this. It was kind of amazing that Dave and Bobby were the 2 people. They didn't
Yeah.
follow it, but they brought
Yeah.
it to the camp.
Friggin' Nick. So, I can't remember whether it was in the book, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, or another book that I read, but there's a story about, in the early 90s in Russia, there was 2 basketball teams they took. They were both even. One team would win one game, one team would win the next whenever they played, and they were always within 2 or 3 points, say half a dozen points. So what they did is they took one team for 6 weeks. All they did was visual imagery and mental relaxation and preparation. And they did it
Yes.
for like an hour and a half every day. And they didn't practice for 6 weeks. Then they took the other team and all they did was practice every day for 6 weeks. And then they played. And the team that didn't practice, that did the mental visualization, beat them by 30 points.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know that story. I've heard
Yeah.
that story. There's doesn't seem to be any greater evidence that, add the mental part to your game, and whatever you have, you'll be a better player with the mental part included, because being able to relax without being able to be completely stressed out and yet still being able to perform has to be a huge secret for any athlete growing up. And I know I've been working in a major midget program for up until last year. And that team, we used to do it at least twice a week in the dressing room after practice on Wednesday and Thursday. Midget teams now practice five times a week plus play. I mean, God, when did we ever do that, eh? But I mean, we had a yoga specialist come in. We had a fitness and conditioning and a powerlifting guy that all used to be a part of the program. That's how far it's come from midget at the racket club.
These kids, they play year round. These kids pretty well.
They do. I mean, the unfortunate part is sometimes that's all they do.
Yeah.
I mean, you finish the hockey season, they want to know where the next camp is, or Mr. Harding, are you going to run a program this year? You know, can I get in it? You know, I've got a couple of friends who want in it, and hockey. Well, if you're an elite athlete, it seems to be an 11-month a year deal nowadays, and that I feel unfortunate about. I mean, you played soccer and were an elite soccer player, and I think that helped you be a better hockey player. So I kind of wish nowadays that kids would explore more things to make them stronger athletes.
Yeah, I agree.
So now that was an interesting point. I was going to wrap us up. I'm going to ask one more question here. Where do you guys think, do you think downtime as opposed to doing this 11, 12 months a year is a better thing to have? Take that off season and recoup, even if you are, you know, hitting the gym and doing something at lightly, but unplug, for lack of a better term, from the sport, from the high pressure. Do you think that's something that needs to be stressed a little bit more?
Yeah, I really do think so. I think that the problem now is these kids, that's all they do is go from one camp to the next, and they never take a break and enjoy life. And you know, I mean, you got to have fun and you got to be happy. And I think that's the problem, is they end up putting way too much pressure on themselves to try to get, you know, better by the time they're 14 so they can get drafted. And that isn't the end of the world.
Yeah. The fortunate part is, oh, sorry, Matt.
No, keep going. Keep going.
So the unfortunate part is that kids that have the mental strength not to be totally involved, like for hockey players on the ice 11 months of the year, like, and a little bit, the unfortunate part is when they group together like that, they stay in those groups year after year, same guys, same teammates. You know, they'll all do the same summer program or weightlifting program. They almost are together more than families. And I think that, you know, playing other sports exposes you to other social, not only media, but social strengths that they're going to need, because you can't play hockey forever.
Right.
Only to 40, right? No, all professional athletics are very short-lived in terms of the length of life that I hope that everybody has. So learning, you know, the strengths that take to make you successful, you know, at whatever hockey you're doing should lead into the rest of your life. In other words, making you more adaptable and more successful in everything that you do. And that's what I hope. That's what I tell all the kids. You know,
yeah, I
be
agree.
successful in your life. And if you've had fun at playing and you're done at midget, or you're done at junior A, or you're done at minor pro, or you're done at the NHL level, yeah, you're done when you're done. But you have a life after that, and you need to start preparing for that too.
That sounds like great advice. So we're about at an hour here, so that's about the sweet spot for these things. Geoff, I can't thank you enough for jumping in on this so quickly. I really didn't expect it when I reached out blindly. Is there anything you have going on that you'd like to plug a little bit, get some word out there about?
No, I mean, I raise awareness and money for mental health, CourtnallSociety.org. We've been doing it for 15 years, and actually probably almost 20 years now. But it's tough time right now. A lot of people need our help, so
Yeah.
we're out there trying to make a difference.
All right, that's fantastic. We will gladly promote anything you have. You just drop me a line. I'm going to keep following Courtnall Society through the Facebook page and whatever else you have. And we probably don't. I don't know how this following is going to go. As of now, this is the episode that I had sort of set as a deadline to have in the can to start throwing them out there. So we'll see how this following goes. I would happily help you promote anything for whatever we have, be it 3 people or 3 million. 3 million would be cool, but let's be honest here. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. This was fantastic seeing you again. And I know Dad has been, you were the top of, you and your brother were at the top of my list next to Hodgson to reach out to right away, because he has always talked so highly of the 3 of you.
Well, thanks again for everything. Thanks for all you did for me. Obviously, you were a big factor in my career.
Geoff, it's been my great pleasure for all the time that I spent with both you and both of your brothers. I did get a little bit of Bruce in the hockey arena, but and all the things that you've done over the last 20 years with mental health. Thank you so much.
Okay, you guys take care.
Thank you,
Thank
Geoff.
you so much.
Okay, bye.